I hope that does not make a lot of people angry. So that's that. Yeah.
So so we mentioned kind of the restoration of communication lines, and I mean we saw some of the PR stunts being done by state media, Ethiopian state media, about the first couple of flights landing in Mekelle, as if Mekelle is the whole of Tigray. But you know, moving on from that, it's positive. It's positive. It steps towards peace, definitely. But speaking on the siege, and I think you called it the silent killer, which I completely agree with. What kind of constitutes as a siege? Is it just communication lines? Is it just a couple of flights to one city in Tigray? So can we actually effectively say that these steps are being taken to break the siege? What is the siege?
What the siege is everything, right? I see it as stripping of freedom of basic services, but the basic services fall under, of course, your water, food, access to those, clean water, school, banking, telecommunication, everything. But again, Tigray still remains a concentration camp, a huge region of concentration camp. People are not able to leave. Even if they do, it's within fear. There's no that freedom, right? There's no you saying that this is my passport. I am quote unquote from Ethiopia, but I was born in Tigray, and just get on a plane and hope to God that no one really sees you sideways, right? That's not what's happening. So that the fact that you do not have freedom, that's what a siege is. You take away that freedom, you take away that humanity, the existence of what being proud to be Tigrayan. That's what siege is. So right now, this restoration of the basic services that you're speaking of, it's not even, let's not even say it that way as a full sentence, because it's not. Mekelle is not only Tigray, and also the fact that we do have 2 flights, and also maybe now there's another flight that's going into Shira. We have been advocating, we have been campaigning for the basic services to be restored to the people of Tigray. Within that is because we're reminding the world that this is the basic human rights, right? So when you are giving people food, water, medication, basic services when it comes to clinic, telecommunication, internet, everything that we're talking about, these are the basic human rights that the people of Tigray have the right to demand these and get them as human beings, as a dignity to live in a free world as everyone else is doing, right? So we're not really buying these things. We're not supposed to be buying our basic services per se. And also this is, again, it was taken away intentionally by the Ethiopian government. So it wasn't really, we're not asking for something that never existed before and that we're demanding for a new flights or new telecommunication methods or food or water or medication. We're asking for things that were taken away by force by the Ethiopian government intentionally to keep Tigray genocide silent and to cover up their crimes, and still is under siege. So the siege in Tigray has not been lifted. One way or another has not been lifted. However, the restoration of communication lines in Tigray has not been 100%. It needs to be 100% for all of us to say that it has been. There is a telecommunication access to Tigray. Locations such as Mekelle, just right outside of Mekelle, and also locations that are under the occupation of the Ethiopian troops, the Eritrean troops, and Amhara militia troops. There are some communications accesses there, and this is something that even the Ethiopian government has said. In locations that I do occupy, I will be providing services, and it's done that. And because it believes that if it's still under the control of those areas, anything that we say, anything that we can share can be denied in any way, or that he has access to it. It's basically, it makes sense. It makes sense for him to have access to the regions that these troops are under the control of it. So when we say reconnect Tigray, we mean all of Tigray. I know we're talking about from east to west and north to south. We're talking about, when we say we allow access to Tigray, we're talking about flights to all Mekelle, to all Tigray, Adwa, Shira, Adigrat, Raya, Western Tigray, Northern, Eastern Tigray, you name it. It has to be all of Tigray. So we're talking about, when you say, like, what does it mean, the siege? The siege you can just compare it to the magnitude that it's been 2 years. The 2 year siege needs to be broken. It has to be to that magnitude when you say there is free services or there is some sort of services or restoration of Tigray. It needs to be compared to that, to the fact that we have been under a de facto blockade for the past 2 years. So until we see full basic services in Tigray, then we can say that our advocacy work is not complete.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important. What you said, the siege has not been broken, because the siege is not it. The lifting of the siege would mean the conditions in which the people, the civilians, can access healthcare, humanitarian aid, and other basic facilities is not restricted. And we are getting crumbs, but it's still heavily restricted. So the restriction in itself is part of the siege, because even throughout the last couple of months, when they declared a humanitarian ceasefire, which we did not see much humanitarian aid coming out of that. We were getting trickles of humanitarian aid. We were getting very inconsistent drops within a massive pool. So it's still the same. It's still the same kind of situation, because although this peace deal has been signed, what have we really got out of it in terms of unrestricting some of the basic facilities that the people should have access to? And something you said, which was very important as well, is that the siege also speaks to the freedom, or the lack of freedom, of the people of Tigray. And when we're talking about this, we cannot talk about the freedom without speaking about the fact that Eritrean troops are a direct threat to the freedom of the civilians in Tigray. So I mean, the presence of Eritrea right from the beginning is something that has been acknowledged. But how do you feel like the international community, institutions and states such as the EU, the UN, the UK, the USA, how are they dealing with the fact that Eritrea continues to be a spoiler in this peace agreement? Eritrea continues to commit atrocities, to loot, to ransack a lot of the private property and also state-owned property in Tigray. And they have not been faced with any consequences. And then again, is that not a slight reflection about the political will from the Ethiopian government to tell the Eritrean government or the Eritrean forces to exit its sovereign state? Does that not show already a lack of the commitment the Ethiopian government has towards this peace deal? And if so, what should the EU, the other institutions that I've mentioned before, what stance do they need to take? What sort of action needs to be, as a result of this, what sort of action needs to be taken?
Yeah, so I think that is that's a mouthful, right? That's a very big question and also a very important question, and the question that makes, I think, most of us really pissed off all the time, right? Whenever we are reading and seeing this, the reactions and from the international community, and also the EU, UN, and USA, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's really no way of fixing one part of it without really shifting the outcome of what will be the other. Again, there's a proof and evidence that the presence of the Eritrean troops as well as Amhara militia in Tigray is not only post-signed the peace deal, meaning locations of Shira, Adwa, Adigrat, Aksum. These are the locations that they came after the peace deal, but also Western Tigray, Northern Eastern Tigray still remains under the occupation of these troops. So the majority of Tigray still remains under these foreign troops, quote unquote, and who are still committing atrocities as we speak every day. And the EU, UN, USA should be addressing these obstacles as problems for this peace deal, because the presence of these troops in Tigray is basically making the peace deal non-existent. It does not exist, as humanitarian agencies are not able to distribute aid. So bank services cannot remain open. Raping, killing, and looting is just a daily occurrence, as if like the peace deal never really was signed. It doesn't exist by the looks of it. So if the UN, EU, and also the USA, if they have a true intention of bringing genuine peace for the people of Tigray and also for Tigray, it needs to have conditions and demands that the Ethiopian government to put together, of course, the monitoring team and also the implementation of this quote-unquote peace deal, and to set deadlines to make sure that the implementation is taking and also is being placed accordingly. And conditions should not be overlooked just because the Ethiopian government has allowed some sort of one flight, or there is a connection in Ma'ala. That doesn't really mean it's done anything, because again, that is his duty. It's responsibility to protect, and it is a responsibility as a government to serve its citizens. And by doing so, the very existence, the very things that it actually took away at the beginning of this war, because it gave it back, that doesn't really mean it did it's right. It has not done anything that really shows that this person or this government is really truly intentionally looking for a peace to come into the country as a whole. But if the EU USA wants to fund, of course, the Ethiopian government, it must demand these funds with to be used in service to civilians wherever they may be. If it's part of post-conflict funding, for example, rebuilding or rehabilitation programs, it needs to wait until there's a proof of evidence that evidence of that, also peace, and is being upholding the agreement that they are demanding. So we're seeing human rights violations and crimes against humanity still being committed in Tigray and also in other regions of Ethiopia. Ethiopia should not be receiving funds because, again, it did one little thing for Tigray. Ethiopia is burning. I cannot emphasize that any more than anything else. So if the EU, UN, USA should see basically Ethiopia as a full picture, as a full country, to ensure that and hold Ethiopia accountable. We cannot band-aid a country and together with funds and hope to God that the turmoil that we're seeing inside does not really explode. It will be this whole quick fix we're seeing from the international world is going to backfire on us. It is backfiring on us right now because no matter what we're saying in Tigray, we're of course advocating for the people of Tigray. But again, what's happening in Oromia is just another example. This is going to just be circulating. The bigger problem, the bigger person, and the biggest criminal to go after is the Ethiopian government. It's not just little by little, region by region. We cannot fix region by region. It's not going to be it. And I'm really terrified that it will just circle back to us at some point if we're only fixing one side of it. So what we ask is we ask for, of course, for EU, UN, and USA to continue to push to advocate to have access to ICRI and also to Tigray and implementation of withdrawals of these foreign troops. Like, really, they need to leave. They are foreign troops. Eritrea is not Ethiopia. No matter how many times we want to emphasize it, Eritrea is not Ethiopia and does not belong in Ethiopia or in Tigray for that matter. Or any parts of Tigray for that matter. So along with lifting the blockade that is happening in Tigray.